Thank you very much, and I'm delighted to be here just to give you a quick 5-minute overview on where we are with the operation, and then I'll be welcome any of your questions, and we can explore any aspect of it. Of course, you know this. Today I'm here to brief the EUMC, and tomorrow there is a conference being hosted by the Spanish presidency that will look at how the EU, whether that's the Commission or the Council, approaches Somalia and piracy in a comprehensive manner. So the next 48 hours are quite useful and important in furthering our understanding of the piracy issue of Somalia. So just by way of background, to sow the seeds, this slide here just reminds us what has occurred over the last 5 years off the coast of Somalia. You can see that in the middle part of 2005-06, there were small pockets of piracy in the Gulf of Aden and off the east coast of Somalia. But over the last 2 years in particular, there has been a real growth in terms of expanding of the area that the pirates have been operating in as they become more adventurous, more fearless, and more determined to strike merchant ships into the central Indian Ocean. And in recent months, we have seen attacks 1,400 miles off Africa, 250 miles off India. So much closer to India than Africa. So this is an Indian Ocean problem which tends to be generated from Somalia. Just to remind you of what my mission is. It's fairly straightforward, it's unambiguous, it's deliverable against. It is focused primarily on humanitarian aid into Somalia, supporting the World Food Programme, and AMISOM in terms of security in Mogadishu. We have a focus on vulnerable ships which move through the Gulf of Aden and the Somali Basin, and where we can, with our ships, will deter, disrupt, arrest and prosecute pirates that we encounter on the high seas. Our mandate at present runs to December of this year, but I'm very confident that at next week's Foreign Affairs Council our mandate will be extended, which will have us operating throughout 2011. Of course, as I said, from a comprehensive approach, supporting the population of Somalia is extremely important and is my #1 priority. The ships that flow from Mombasa, Dar es Salaam, and occasionally from India, delivering food aid to Somalia, are key for protection so that they're not attacked by pirate or armed gangs. And the EU, over the last 16 months or so, has escorted 73 World Food Programme ships delivering 400,000 tons of food to that country. And that aid allows an element of stability in the population to be delivered despite the efforts of Al-Shabaab in southern Somalia to close down the World Food Programme offices. What that has meant is that our escorts from Mombasa are now much longer, as the World Food Programme use the northern ports, and it buys up about 1/3 of my forces at any one time to provide this essential level of security. But we'll do it, it's required, it's very important to the European Union, and we'll ensure that aid is delivered safely. Likewise, our prime customer, I suppose, to use modern management speak, is the merchant community. And our security centre, which we have developed in Northwood for the Horn of Africa, is now the premier portal for the merchant community to discuss business with military, whether that's EU or we pass on information to NATO and the coalition forces. And it is extremely successful in ensuring that the ships that transit through the Gulf of Aden and the Indian Ocean are aware of the risk, can register with me, they know where our ships are, we can keep them updated on activity in the Indian Ocean. And I think this has been a key driver in delivering strong levels of stability in the Gulf of Aden, which I'll come to shortly. This slide, which is slightly light, but hopefully you can make out the dots, shows what's happened in the Indian Ocean over the last 2.5, 3 months. During that period, we have seen piracy on an industrial scale. It's certainly in the Somali Basin. And we in the European Union, alongside NATO and the coalition forces, as well as Kenya and the Seychelles and the Maldives, have disrupted, dismantled, broken up over 70 pirate action groups who had put to sea from the eastern coast of Somalia with the intent of attacking ships. We have processed nearly 500 suspected pirates and ensured that the majority of those groups were broken up before they were able to attack any merchant ships. So despite that huge rise in the amount of pirates at sea, despite that huge rise, sadly, we still have today around 17 ships held hostage by pirates, with just under 400 mariners at anchor waiting for ransom negotiations to conclude. Next slide. I mentioned the Gulf of Aden. This is the transit through which 30,000 ships a year move. 35% of Europe's energy supplies come from this part of the world. And you can see in late 2008, it was a hugely volatile region with a large number of ships seized after a large number of attacks. And that galvanized the EU, amongst others, to deploy their forces. I'd like to think that from Easter, spring of last year, when the European Union established, NATO returned to the fray, we worked with the coalition forces, industry was much more diligent at adopting safety procedures. We have a much more coordinated approach between the military and the merchant, that the level of attacks has gone down quite significantly from a state of around 15 per month at the end of 2008, early 2009, to around 4 or 5 a month today. And only 3 ships which have followed the correct transit corridor through the Gulf of Aden have been seized by pirates over the last year. It is 3 too many. There is no room for complacency, and recent attacks in the bottom of the Bab al-Mandeb do prove that the pirates are still agile and adapting their tactics. But in terms of security, the vast majority, over 29,900, have got through safely. This is the corridor picture. So we can see at the bottom end there, 2010, some attacks, but very infrequent seizures by the pirates. And our ambition is to preserve that for the rest of this year and certainly through next year. The Somali Basin, next slide, is a different kettle of fish. These are the types of vessels that the pirates use to get out into the central Indian Ocean. You can see seized Indian dhows with attack skiffs embarked, merchant ships with attack skiffs covered up, large dhows towing their vessels behind them. And these are the sorts of motherships that we have been breaking up in significant numbers in the Indian Ocean. Next slide. And those green columns you can see at the bottom on the 2010 slide allude to the number of action groups broken. But nevertheless, the ships, the red column, are still sadly being taken. And that includes 3 Taiwanese fishing vessels just 250 miles off the coast of India. The final point to lodge here is that in 2009, we were essentially reactive to the operations in the Indian Ocean. In 2010, we have a much better force flow on maritime patrol aircraft. We have coordinated our efforts with NATO and with CMF and the regional countries. We have engaged with industry in a much more forthright manner. And that has allowed us to respond positively to this surge of activity in the first 3 months of 2010. We'll now consolidate, work with our military partners over the summer, and decide just how we'll approach the Indian Ocean for the autumn period once the monsoon has blown through in September. Next slide. So for the future, and this will be for my relief, General Howes to take forward. We await the conclusions of the Foreign Affairs Council next week with regards to mandate extension, which will allow us to stabilise the assets, ships and aircraft at our disposal for 2011. We need to continue to work with industry. There are plenty of areas where we can still refine our processes and continue to target the large number, it's a minority, but it's still a sizable minority, of ships who, for whatever reason, choose not to follow the very clear advice for transiting these areas. Our operational outputs at sea will be revalidated over the summer, both in the Gulf of Aden and in the Indian Ocean, to check that our processes are right, and we'll continue to work with Kenya, Seychelles, and the other countries in the region, Yemen, to try and develop mutual capabilities which will respond to this continuing threat. So I think it's progress was the way I would describe it. There's still plenty more to do. There's certainly no room for complacency. And reminding ourselves that there are nearly 400 people held hostage, we still have a job to do.